talking kind of in broader strokes about a tool called Lexis Practical Guidance and then Westlaw Practical Law, which are two kind of modules within each of those subjects. We'll start off in Lexis here. Basically, this is a kind of quick way to find litigation material. So if you're looking for things like forms or checklists or sample interrogatory stuff where you're trying to start litigation or accomplish a particular task that your supervising attorney has set out for you, this is a really good resource to start here instead of, one of the things that you'll hear a lot in legal practice and legal research is don't reinvent the wheel, right? Someone has probably done the thing you're trying to do first. And so you should use work that other people have put together, kind of build on that, obviously tailor it to suit your interests, suit your client. But you can use some of these forms and checklists to develop that stuff much more quickly and more efficiently without you having to kind of struggle around, especially if it's something you've never done before or something you never really heard about before. So my example for today, we're going to be talking about, like, if you were asked by a supervising attorney to draft like a consulting agreement. So you're working for a firm, they represent a company, the company wants to retain a consultant, and they say, hey, law firm, draft us up a consulting agreement so that we can properly engage with this person and we make sure that all of the disclosures and payment and all of that is covered in there. I have no idea how to do that. I've never had to draft that before in my life. But if we go into practical law, we can find examples of those things. So you'd start in practical guidance on this left-hand side of Lexis. So legal research is probably where you spend most of your time. This is where you search for cases and statutes and regulations and all that. Practical guidance is just below it on the left there. And so you'll see all of our practice areas in practical guidance. So antitrust, bankruptcy, business entities, healthcare, insurance, all of those good things. For this case, because we're talking employment contracts, right? Labor and employment, probably the place we want to go. And so if we click on labor and employment, you can see this is their general practice area. So each of those topics gets you to one of these landing pages where you can see topics, tasks, market standards, which are things like pay rates and time and that sort of stuff. The state law comparison tool, which is a really handy tool that you can actually just compare the law in different states. So if you're, trying to figure out which, if you're trying to incorporate some, an entity or something like that, and you want to know which state has the best set of laws for that, you can compare across a few states that are candidates to see what's the most favorable to you as well. And then we have just obviously specific to labor and employment, some employment discrimination settlements, some market data there. We have specific resource kits. So if you're drafting an employee handbook, if you are trying to develop policies for return to work, dealing with COVID-19, they have a resource book there as well. We also have pro-employee materials. So if you're a company trying to draft materials that are more suited to employees versus employers, we have some options there. Or if you're an attorney representing an employee, right, against an employer, you can use those to kind of filter that right away. In-house advisor, typically representing an employer. So because we're looking for a consulting agreement, we're probably going to go into employment contracts here. So we click on employment contracts. We have various practice notes. And then we have these templates over here. So templates are forms that you can use that have the clauses you need, have the information you need. You just need to plug in kind of your own client and your information into those to make sure that they're actually viable. So once we are in here, we're going to look at all of the practice notes. And we are going to scroll down in here until we find consulting agreement. So we are looking for consulting agreements. We have to draft a consulting agreement. How do we do that? We go to this consulting agreement negotiation and drafting toolkit. And so this will provide us a series of tools and provisions and drafting guidelines for how to draft a consulting agreement. So we have guidelines there, common provisions, a little narrative explanation of what this toolkit is, what kind of information it provides. And then we have just the various sections. So scope of the relationship, amount of compensation, their status as an independent contractor. And they also link out to other secondary sources that may be helpful in explaining some of this too. So if I don't know what the heck the difference between an independent contractor is and employing someone as an employee, you can go and look and see what the risks there are of a worker being misclassified. So if it is unclear in your agreement whether the person is an independent contractor or an employee, there are a lot of legal ramifications around that. If you look at what's going on with Uber and various kind of gig economy employers, quote unquote employers, they all want their people working for them to be independent contractors because they're way less liable, versus the workers want to be employees because that entitles them to more benefits and protection. Again, we have taxes, tax identification, all kinds of good information there. And so we also have our related content on the side where we can look at practice notes. So if you know you're looking at various things you want covered, various different types of information, we can click on that there. So non-competes, independent classification, tax issues, state practice notes, kind of charts. So comparing again state to see where your state is and how it's different from others. We also have forms, clauses, and checklists. So if we are actually engaging a consultant, we have an example consulting agreement that we can just click on, open up, and just have our agreement. This is just a form you can download. So if you click the download button here, you can download the form in a Word document with no annotations. So you can just go in, type it, type with it directly into Word and make all the changes you need. You can also get the drafting notes and optional clauses added in line, or you can add them at the end of the document. Basically, the drafting notes are little bits of commentary after different phrases and different clauses that describe why that clause is important, why it's a good idea to have that in there. And then alternate clauses basically make some subtle changes. So you can use whatever suits your client best. And you can see, again, they're maintained. If you hover over the word maintained there, you can see when they were last updated. So this was updated in April 2022. So I know it's pretty current. It matches current standards. If something's a little bit older, you can, be wary and make sure that it's up to date. Generally, these practice areas are pretty good. The most I've seen them kind of out of date is about a year, because they usually get updated yearly. So I've seen some August 2021 and that sort of stuff that hasn't gone through yet, but should be coming soon. You can again open the form in Word. You have information about the author. So these are usually written by practitioners, by experts in the field. So you can get a sense of who's writing them. And then if we go down to, we can see the difference here between the form itself and then a checklist. So here we've got a checklist where we have the drafting guidelines kind of written out as easy to find, easy to read, little digestible bullet points. Make sure you have all the clauses that you need and just kind of browse through that. And these again can be downloaded and modified in Microsoft Word, everything like that. So really helpful tool, very flexible, pretty much broader coverage than you would think. Practical law tends to have, or practical guidance rather, I get the two of them mixed up all the time because they have incredibly similar. But practical guidance in Lexis has a bit more in terms of coverage. It has more stuff, but Practical Law has on Westlaw has a few more features just because it is older, so they've had a little bit more time to work out some kinks. But both of them allow you to download the forms. Both of them allow you to work through that information as well. So I guess just to go back here and show the example forms once we download. If we want to be sure that we have, again, those alternate clauses, have those drafting notes, you click that, it'll download it as a PDF, and usually doesn't take too long. There you go, you have your PDF. That opens up right there with the drafting notes with the optional clauses. So if you're doing that, typically you won't get a Word document just because it does add them in below. But if you don't care about having the alternate clauses in the document, you just download it as a Word doc, and you can see that right here, open form in Word, even opens it up .doc, and eventually will open. And then opens as the agreement that you can just go through and edit right away. So you don't even need to type anything really if you're just using one of these model agreements, which is very convenient. So that covers pretty much everything in practical guidance. And again, to get there, you can either use this kind of hamburger menu up here at the top to get to practical guidance, or you can use this on the side, and then we just browsed through the practice areas. You can also search. So if we know we're looking for the consulting agreement, we don't know quite where it'll be, you can just search consulting agreement and get those documents just pop up. So the checklist right here, the long form kind of actual agreement right here, and then also in terms of mergers and acquisitions as well, if you had something that you're working on there. So that pretty much covers practical guidance. So we'll move on then to practical law, which you can get to from the Westlaw homepage. So when you log into Westlaw, this is your normal login page, right? You click this little down arrow here, and then practical law is right below it. And it loads eventually. So practical law, you may have seen used for international law as well. They have a pretty robust global section as well. So you can go to global law if you're looking for international material. But here we're focusing on US. Just like with Lexis, we've got the practice areas right in here. If we're going to look for the same type of agreement, just to kind of compare, we have employee benefits, executive compensation, commercial transaction, labor and employment, just like we had with practical guidance. So into labor and employment we go. You'll see it's a very similar kind of landing page where we have different topics, resource types. You can browse by jurisdiction as well. So, you know, if we're in Ohio and want to see Ohio material, you can click on that. If you're in New York or other states, you can click on those as well. Also here we've got Ohio labor and employment materials, all of those practice notes that can help you if you have any questions there. If we are looking, just like we were here, for a consultation agreement, let's run the same search here. We have some severance agreements, plaintiff, consulting agreement, I think is the one instead of consultation. And so that's an example. You search one way, it doesn't quite come up, search the other. There we go. So here we have our independent contractor consultant agreement as pro client. So whoever your client is, you can make it one way or another. Or we will look at this consulting agreement here. And you can see we have a few options. We can add annotations, hide annotations. We have our practice notes, just like you have in Lexis, right? They're just hidden under a slightly different looking thing. You'll have terms highlighted. So if you search terms, Westlaw automatically highlights the search terms in the document. Lexis does the same exact thing. You can open in Word, you can show drafting notes, download, and do all of that as well. I want to see if they have. I'm curious. We have any of the. So there's a tool that Practical Law has called Drafting Assistant. And basically what you can do with Drafting Assistant is it will ask you a series of questions and you would fill out information. It will just fill the form out for you. So it'll have those adaptable fields. Let me see if I can. See if I can find that again. Yeah, so where it says automated document, that's where you know you have one of these documents that you can fill out. So it looks like they only have that for Illinois and California. But if we go into this Illinois document here, we can click this Start Drafting button. And this will take you to a separate page where you just start, again, filling out all the information you need to have it autofill your document instead of just starting wherever. So here, we'll say if we have parties, you know, the company, we'll say Ohio Northern, street address, 5 South Main Street, Ada, Ohio, 5. 810. And so you'll see it pops in as you fill stuff out. So here we'll say this is an LLC. And then you can add your independent contractor, which we'll just say is me right now. And then you can add address. I won't add address. But you can kind of see how this adds more and more information of what the service is. So we'll say I'm teaching workshops. You have access to, we'll have provided third-party access rules. Yes, we'll have that. Specific types of access, no. And so it adds and subtracts those extra clauses that you had to kind of manually add in practical guidance. It'll automatically add those in these in practical law. So again, subtle differences, a little bit more, again, since this is an older system, they've had a little bit more time to kind of perfect tools and work on that sort of stuff. But really, they both have a lot of very high quality content, both really well maintained and both very useful as you are, working in your externships, working for your employers over the summer during the semester. If you have to draft agreements, draft clauses, motions, that sort of stuff. These, between practical law and practical guidance, there's probably a form that will just give you the information you need to provide. Obviously, you fill it out, you make sure it matches what your client is actually doing, but it means you don't have to start from scratch, which when you're staring at an assignment for something you've never done before is a big relief. That you don't need to just kind of spin your wheels thinking like, well, how the heck do I, write interrogatory questions? How the heck do I draft these contracts and agreements? We have sample clauses, forms, all of that you can use. So I mean, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to go over. I don't know if you have any questions